Jerry here again. Welcome to the third episode in the My IBM Experience Mini-Series. Please remember that my experience may mirror your IBM or be completely different. For example, I know another IBMer living in our metro area that was diagnosed near the same time I was in 2007, but her slow-paced IBM progression is at about the same now in 2020 as mine was in 2009 or 10. My current FRS is 2.75, her FRS is about a 29. If you've been diagnosed with IBM, pray that you have one of the very, very slow progressing cases. Unfortunately, there are no ways of telling upfront what progression speed path your IBM will take. As I've said many times in my 42 previous episodes, keeping an annual log of your functional rating scale surveys might just be the best way to predict the aggressiveness of your IBM. I remember the day I received my initial diagnosis of IBM. I felt bewildered, confused, and scared. Now, 13 years after my official diagnosis, I still feel somewhat bewildered and confused about it, and realize it may have been longer than only 13 years. Now, myositis doctors state that the true average of IBM onset averages 4 to 6 years before the actual diagnosis. Having said that, my IBM may actually have started, in the worst case scenario, in about 2001, although the falls did not start until late 2004. We ended the previous episode at about the crossover point between stage 2 and stage 3, or in the neighborhood of 14 or 15 on the FRS scale. The time frame for crossing this arbitrary threshold would be 2015 or 16, or approximately 9 years since my official diagnosis. Crossing over into stage 3 wasn't a catastrophic event, only a loss of another pawn on the chessboard of IBM life. The main drivers to lower FRS score in that time frame was in the hygiene question, where I lost considerable ground when requiring additional assistive devices when showering, toileting, and dressing, when I needed some assistance with some clothing apparel. So questions 4, 5, and 6 took the hits on that 2016 survey. In the following year's survey, question number 1 and a 1.5 survey deduction when choking on food went from occasional to much more frequent. In that same 2017 survey, my handwriting went from not all words are legible to able to grip pen but unable to write. I also decreased my cutting food and handling utensil skills by a half point because I started to require more assistance at mealtime. Question number 7 also took a half point reduction as a change in turning over in bed and adjusting the covers was becoming more and more troublesome. It looks like my 9th and 10th years since official diagnosis was full of some real serious point changes, going from an FRS score of 17 to only 9.5 in 2 years, and was feeling like I was on a runaway freight train. Sometimes while sitting at my computer desk, I would do some hand barbell work, first struggling with a paltry 3-pound weight, then to not being able to manage a measly 2-pounder. Unfortunately, exercising the muscles not affected by IBM did not provide satisfactory benefits any longer, as there seemed to be so few skeletal muscles now not affected by the IBM. And now in a power chair more and more throughout 2017, my daily regimen now focuses on stretching and not as much on resistance exercise. It has now become impossible for my weak hands and arm to grasp the footrests on my power chair, so I've improvised a way to do it by using a combination of the power chair's elevating seat and a brick hearth in front of our fireplace. Improvise. Now there's a term every IBMer must become familiar with, as it becomes the only way to sometimes even do the smallest of tasks. As my IBM progressed during 2018 and 19, I could tell my transfers were getting much more unsafe in every attempt. I learned how important a 3-point contact was in every transfer and still utilize this practice today. By 3-point contact, I mean maximizing as much time during the transfer contacting 3 points. 2 feet on the floor, 1 hand on the power chair. Or during a pivot step, 1 foot on the floor, 1 calf against the power chair, 1 hand on the power chair. Any 3 points of contact while keeping my knees locked seemed to help assure the stability and balance required me to safely transfer. I still shower standing up using a 3-point contact practice to get from my power chair, then a 3 or 4-point contact with 2 hands on the grab bars in the shower and feet spread shoulder width apart and a little pigeon-toed to help the knees from collapsing. In 2019, my calf muscles really diminished. Up until then, they seemed to be rock solid, but have turned to mush now, just like my upper legs did in previous years. Oddly, my calf muscles still occasionally get cramps in them, but I've learned to be able to stop the cramping by flexing my feet at the ankles up and down. I constantly move my heels up and down to stretch my lower leg muscles when sitting at my computer desk. What other physical changes did I experience in 2018 and 19? Well, my hands became almost completely useless for grabbing any object, except if I pinched something between my thumb and middle finger on my left hand. As I can no longer reach my mouth just using my bicep muscles, I must use my elbow planted on the surface to pivot my forearm to and from my meal plate and mouth. Yeah, I'm pretty stubborn when getting food to my mouth, so I must keep finding methods to get it there. It's a win for me as long as I can still get food to my mouth without having someone feed me. I decided to start the Medicare process for a new power chair in late 2019. The now 3-year-old Quantum Edge with an elevating seat that I bought used was assigned as my backup chair, and my even older Quantum Q6000Z backup was sold to another user. There are a couple of videos on this channel explaining the Medicare process I used, if interested. In 2019, I continued to ready myself for the final part of Stage 3, when I would become totally dependent on someone else by purchasing a sit-to-stand lift. Although I can still precariously transfer from an elevating seat device at the time of this video, this sit-to-stand lift can place me in and retrieve me from any chair, bed, or toilet in my house. Considering my usual 3 sitting locations are my power chair and lift recliner during the day and my high-low bed at night, the ability to sit elsewhere is a plus. If you want to hear some samples of what I can no longer do within the bottom half of Stage 3, here's a list of some of the daily living activities I can no longer do by myself. Wash my hands or brush my teeth, blow my nose or clean my ears, scratch an itch or swat a mosquito, reach some light switches or dress myself, drink from a glass or cup or jot down a note, open a door or handle a book or magazine, and on and on and on. You can probably guess that my FRS survey score will not be going in a positive direction. For an earlier video, I did a survey at the half-year mark in February 2020 and scored a 2.75, or down to about 6.8% functionality. In 3 years, my score dropped from a score of 9.5 to 2.75, with decreases in most areas that were not already at 0. Breaking the whole numbers down into half points or quarter points was necessary to be able to differentiate the changes toward the bottom end of this functional rating scale. You might consider an FRS survey score of only 2.75 or 6.8% functionality to be an extremely low and dire condition, but I thank God and the caregivers for all things that I can still manage to get accomplished. And you might have thought that talking about Stage 3 in this episode means it's the last episode in this mini-series. But there will be one more part to my IBM experience, I guess an epilogue to my story, where I'll identify plans that I'm making for my future. Becoming totally dependent means almost 100% assistance from someone else, and plans have to be made to help make that task easier for them. I'll share with you some of my plans that I've made for the future and for when that famous FRS score goes to 0. Stay tuned, and don't forget to smash that thumbs up or like button on your screen and press the subscribe button if you have not done so in previous episodes. Until then, be safe, my IBM friends.